Well, welcome to one of the world's largest tourism fairs here in Western Berlin. We are standing here in the China Hall of one of the largest tourism fairs in the whole world. An entire room, one of the biggest stands in the whole fair. And before we walk through it, we're going to start with a little demonstration of Shaolin monks, which is attracting quite a crowd. Let's just have a little watch of this. So these are Shaolin monks from China's Henan province, here to show many thousands of people that make their way through the ITB International Tourism Fair over the next few days, what China has to offer for international tourists travelling from Germany and other parts of Europe. Okay, so as this performance continues, let me bring in Andreas Jans. Andreas Jans is the CEO of China Tours. He is partly responsible for the stand and the performance that's taking place here. And let me just begin by asking you, sir, speak to any of the stands at this tourism fair, and all of them will be talking about how they're trying to bring the increasingly powerful Chinese tourists out of China to their country. You're trying to do the opposite. You're trying to take foreign tourists, bring them into China. Is that working? How many people are going? Where are they coming from?
It's working, and it's working very well. We're not just trying, we've been doing very successfully for the last 20 years. So we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. The company was founded in 1998, and we've approximately over the last 20 years
Performance in the background.
We've brought approximately 100,000 guests from Germany to China over the last years. So we're very proud of that, and it's still not the most popular destination for the German source market, but it's growing, and we're very happy to be part of that growth.
So it is growing, and this is, we're looking at Henan province here specifically.
Yes.
What does Henan province have to offer? Shaolin monks, presumably.
Well, Henan province is basically, it's the cradle of Chinese civilization. It's based in the center of China. The Yellow River, which was basically the source of life for civilization in China, is going right through the province. It's basically what made agriculture possible, what made large cities possible in that province, and 4 of the 8 imperial cities in the history of China were based in this province. It's the beginning of the Silk Road. The Shaolin Temple is based in Henan. Tai Chi was invented in this province. So we've got really the core of everything that essential Chinese was started in this province.
Let me ask you, to the international tourist, to an outsider, they're considering where to go on holiday. Perhaps a lot of us might look at China and think this is a country that at various points in its history, in its recent history, has destroyed a lot of that heritage, and is now a country that is very economically focused, is rapidly developing. Is that authenticity still there, or is it being recreated? Do you think that some of the shine is lost? That it's not always something that's been there for thousands of years.
Well, I think.
Or am I wrong?
I think, irrespective of what happened in the past and things that may have been destroyed, we see that history is very much alive, and that despite naysayers, I think there's a real effort in China, probably more than in any other country that has had these challenges in its history, is really doing a good job and trying very hard to recreate in a way as authentically as possible. Maybe that hasn't happened everywhere in the past, but I think especially in provinces like these, you know, they're really making effort because they know that foreign tourists, foreign guests, they want to see authentic China. They want to see what life is really like. They don't want to see artificial things. So I think there's a recognition that that authenticity is the biggest selling point that you can have as a destination. So we're very happy to be part of this movement to generate authentic and innovative new travel products.
Thank you very much, Andreas.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Enjoy the show. We're going to take our audience on and keep walking through. A great effort by China, he was saying, to show people the authentic side of this huge and ancient civilization. That, of course, is why, as we look around this room and other, similar tourism fairs around the world, China often has one of the largest stands. And actually, one of the things that officials here were talking about before we came on air was how each province now has its own tourism ministry, which attends tourism fairs like this all around the world to try and regionalise those efforts and show how different provinces in China have all kinds of different things to offer. So I think we can now speak to our next guest at the China stand. Hello, sir. Let me just introduce you to our audience. This is Derek Lin. Derek Lin is from the White Swan Hotel in Guangzhou province,
Yep.
and I believe you were saying the very first 5-star hotel in the whole of China. Is that right? Could I begin by asking you? You said you'd been at the Swan Hotel in Guangzhou province, working there for the last 22 years.
Right.
How much have you seen the tourist market change around you over that time?
Sorry, again, sorry. How much?
You have been there for 22 years, working in this hotel.
Yeah.
How much has the area changed over that time? How much has the tourism market changed over that time?
Okay. You mean how much?
I can hold that.
Okay. You mean the guest market or the?
Yeah. How has it changed? How has Guangzhou province changed?
I think actually I worked in White Swan Hotel for 22 years, and I think the market is a huge change. How to say? I think in the past 40 years is not only the Guangdong, the China economy to grow up. So White Swan Hotel this year we are 35 years old. It's very historical in our place in Guangzhou. Yes, and then White Swan Hotel I think is one of the very historical 5-star hotel to follow China economy to grow up step by step. So I can say White Swan Hotel is to see the China economy to grow up. So it's very typical 5-star hotel in China.
Can I just, perhaps we can even pan, this is Guangzhou here, is it?
It's Guangdong here.
Guangdong, okay, yeah. Okay, maybe we can just pan around a bit and look at some of the things that this province has to offer. And as we're doing that, let me ask you a second question. As you were saying, this is a province that is closely connected to China's rapid economic growth. How does that play into the tourism market? I might ask Hans to slowly make his way back here as we do that. Our camera has disappeared. But it has big ports. It's a trade hub. How much of a challenge does that pose for the tourism industry? Economic development or tourism? Can you have both?
Tourism and business, you mean?
Just the fact that this is a province that is so central to China's economic growth.
Yeah.
Can that spoil the tourism?
Yes. I think now Guangdong, not only the natural resource and also the human resource now is more and more stronger, and now we are trying to develop and generation. Guangdong is become China the tourist and business destination. So we have so many resources, you can see we are, food is very important in Guangzhou. So it's a food paradise, you can taste very famous food in Guangdong, in Guangzhou. So I think we were very interesting. Even our hotel is very famous food in Guangdong food and Guangzhou food. so many guests here about our hotel is about in Guangzhou. The food is called yam cha, that morning tea. It's not only for food, it's like a culture. So we combine food and culture together. So all the tourists and all the people come to Guangzhou, you can from the food to experience some culture. So that is one of these. Another one is for the another culture is Lingnan culture. That means it's one of the very typical China culture. So in our place, there are so many typical buildings, also hammocks. You can feel the different cultures from Guangzhou. Is very special.
Derek Lin, thank you very much indeed. We're going to continue our journey.
Okay.
Enjoy your show. I'll just come this way with our camera. So we have one more interviewee, if everyone can bear with us. Walking through, as I say, this giant China stand, countries from all over the world, but China, very much our focus. Now, a final interviewee. Hello.
Waiting for so long.
Do you know, I haven't written down your name. I must ask your name.
My name is Chen. You can call me Chen.
And you're working with the tourism board for Hebei province?
Yes,
right?
Of course.
Okay. I guess some of the features that this province has to offer might be more familiar to the international audience. Maybe you could tell me a bit about it.
Okay, you know Great Wall, and Great Wall has more than 8,000 kilometers long, and they have more than 2,000 kilometers long only in Hebei. So if you take a look at that pictures, that shows the splendid view of the Great Wall in Hebei, and this have the most beautiful and also the more better conserved view of Great Wall. And also in winter, the next Winter Olympic Games will be held in Hebei province, in Zhangjiakou. So we have some also pictures there. If you like to ski, you can go Hebei. And also we have the biggest palace in Chinese garden in Hebei province is the mountain resort in Chengde. So no matter what you want, you like cultures, you come to Hebei. You like landscape, you come to Hebei. And Hebei has everything for you and only 1 or 2 hours away from Beijing. So if you have 144 hours in China, you go to Beijing and just come by to Hebei, and Hebei has everything for you. Hebei is waiting for you.
So one of the most famous provinces in China in terms of tourism, as you're saying. Let me ask you a question that I know is preoccupying some delegates at some of the stands here over tourism. And I know there's been some discussions in places like Barcelona in Spain about whether there should be limits or restrictions, more restrictions put on tourists to ensure that great historical artifacts like the Great Wall are protected as they should be. Is China doing enough to protect that?
I think so, but the Great Wall is really, really long, and it takes more efforts to rebuild everything on that. And because I think China is trying to. So if you want to put the bricks back, they want to produce at the original way. So it takes time and take money for that. I think Chinese government is taking more efforts. Firstly, in Beijing, because they always have the Great Wall in Beijing, and the other, for example, in Hebei, maybe it's the second steps. But I think they were taking great care for the old world heritage.
And before I leave you, let me ask you one more thing. What are we looking at here? Perhaps you could tell us some of the other.
The lanterns.
Yeah.
So normally we have the lanterns for the lunar years, January 15th, because the moon will be round. So that is when all the family members get together. So we have the lanterns going on, and we can see the views of the moons. Then also we have some pictures, put it on the lanterns, and also the quiz. And you can answer the questions, and parents will give you the sweets or money for lucky for the new year. So that's kind of like our traditional Chinese. But this lantern is special because you can see here it's very beautiful. This actually is Hebei's folk culture. It's a paper cutting. So this combines the lanterns and paper cutting. It's one of the famous things in Hebei also.
Beautiful Chinese craft.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time.
And thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your show. Okay, so I think we're almost going to wrap up there. As I'd mentioned, one of the big themes, not just here at the China stand, but across this entire tourism fair this year, is about this idea of over-tourism. Popular tourist destinations. We've just seen one there, some of the highlights. Places like Barcelona, places like Paris, where there is this increasing worry about increasingly wealthy tourists in increasing numbers from places like China, but also more established outbound tourist markets, that are coming in such high numbers to these areas, what can be done by those countries to try and protect and try and not have to take those extreme measures, which some critics in places like Barcelona have said, ban tourists, put on restrictions that might limit their enjoyment and limit their travel time. That is one of the questions. And another thing we're going to be finding out through the day here, going to places like the Iranian stand, I believe Egypt, and other Middle Eastern and North African countries have stands here as well, is looking at the threat of terrorism and the impact that has had on tourism markets. In previous years, that has certainly been a preoccupation, but anecdotally at least, perhaps you might argue that is of a lesser concern to tourists heading into 2018. You obviously had that particularly worrying period in France, in Paris, in places like Germany, where the European tourism market was quite seriously impacted by a number of terrorist attacks and security threats. Fingers crossed, touch wood, we have not seen the same level of terrorist threats, certainly in public. So a question we'll be asking here through the day to some of those other stands is whether those tourist numbers are coming back up as a result, and whether tourism and tourists around the world now have different concerns, perhaps in the Korean Peninsula, for example, perhaps in places like Iran, which had a booming tourism market off the back of being striking its international nuclear deal with the international community, no longer being under sanctions. This idea that investment was about to come in quite rapidly and prop up its tourism market, to now this renewed threat of tension in the region, tension between Iran and the United States. Do those kind of political concerns have an impact on tourists as well? So those are the discussions. You'll see them in our final report, which will be posted on the CGTN website over the next 24 hours or so. Perhaps let me leave you with this video on the right here, the best of China, one of the biggest stands, one of the biggest international tourist fairs in the world. This is Guy Henderson reporting from Berlin for CGTN.